In late 2013, Shadow of the Colossus was given away on PlayStation Plus, and I decided to give it a shot because in every R Games Art conversation, Shadow of the Colossus is sure to come up, and it's hard not to be curious about it after years of reading about it online, so I gave it a shot. And I didn't really get it, you know? I totally saw what people were seeing in the 20 minutes I played, but I just could not get over the controls. As a millennial gamer, I just could not really jump on triangle. You're asking so much of me here. You want me to hit a different button to jump? What are you people thinking? I can't do that. Help! So I put the game down. I got to the first Colossus and I could not defeat it because I just could not wrap my head around grab on R1 and jump on triangle and sword on square. They were just asking so much. I didn't get it. I'm dumb. I don't know things. I'm a millennial gamer. But as of February 6th, 2018, let me check to make sure my shill money came through. Oh yeah. Oh, that'll be enough. Oh yeah. Thanks, Shigeru Miyamoto. On February 6th, 2018, Shadow of the Colossus was released on PlayStation 4. This remake was handled by Blue Point Games, who also handled the PS3 version, FYI. And gosh golly, is it pretty cool. I feel like, as the title of this video will tell you, I finally get Shadow of the Colossus. Like, I finally understand it. It's just simple things like the controls being more, I guess, more modernized and like in line with other third-person action adventure games. And there's something to be said for losing a unique control scheme, but there's also something to be said for massaging an existing control scheme to lower the barrier of entry for other players. And that original playstyle is still available as an option, so you know, no huge loss there. If you're a purist, you can still go through that way. But for the rest of us, you know, it's finally at a point where the controls made sense. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Of course, jump would be on X. Of course, I would use one of the shorter buttons for the arrow and not square button. Like, great, got it. And man, if you're going to talk about PS4 remakes, we're getting quite a few lately, but Shadow of the Colossus is quite a gorgeous game. It is very, very good looking. I'm sure this is another thing where purists will definitely always prefer the original game because it is so impactful to them, but everything you felt with that game is probably what I'm feeling with this release, and I think it's just really great. There are some vistas that are just incredible to look at, and they were impressive in the original, mind you, and I was just very taken aback by the way the game looked, and I think they did a really good job, you know, kind of having to do their own thing, because the late PS2 limits are way different than what you can do with this PS4, but God, is it good to look at. I was just in awe the whole time, honestly. It's just so good looking. And it really just compounded the sense of scale that is apparent in Shadow of the Colossus. You're some little dude with a dinky little sword and a bow and arrow that seems to bounce off most things you shoot with it. And you're going up against these things that are like 10, 20 times taller than you. Some of them are like giant snake-like monsters and all this stuff. And you walk in every battle like, how the hell am I going to do this, right? It's like you see this huge thing towering over you, or it's leering down at you from some pillar, and you're just like, what the fuck? You know, how am I supposed to do this? But you figure it out, and when you do, you feel like a goddamn genius. It's great. It reminds me of, like, you know, certain situations like there are Zelda bosses where you walk in there and you're like, how the hell am I going to do this? But in those cases, you usually just got an item, and it's like, okay, I gotta think about how to use this new item I just got to take this guy down. In Shadow of the Colossus, it's like, I have a limited skill set, my climbing is limited, like, what the fuck? And figuring it out feels awesome. I will say some of the later bosses, I feel, maybe weren't as readily, you know, obvious as to what you're supposed to do, but you still feel pretty good when you figure it out. But I feel like the first half of bosses, for me, were just a constant string of highlights. Like, everyone was like, I have no idea what the fuck to do. I figured it out. Okay, feel smart. See you the next one. There was one late game one I really like, and you know, spoilers, if you don't want to see anything past the first 3 Colossus, go away, because I'm going to show a late game one. But there was something that really stuck out for me, and it was what in this flying desert, you know, whatever the hell this thing is, boss. You look at this, and it, you know, it's off in the distance flying around, and you're just like, you've dealt with like one or two that fly by this point, but here you're just like, what the fuck? So you go over to the mountain and you're like, maybe I'm supposed to climb this thing and jump on top of it. You circle around it and you're like, I can't climb up this thing. And then you take another look at the monster and you're like, oh, okay. I gotta shoot. Oh, okay. So you do that and it comes down and it gives you a way to climb up. And, you're riding along this thing, watching, all that beautifully, textured and detailed, like, hair on it flap in the wind and shit. And shit. I'm serious when I say and shit. This is when I finally took a step back with this game, and I'm like, there has not been one quick time event in this whole game. Like, all this impressive shit that happens in this game, that's all, like, my intuition. Like, this was all me that got here. Handheld by smart game design. Like, you take a step back and you're like, oh yeah, those 3 sacks that you shoot at this thing, like, those are obviously like shoot me signs, but it's not immediately right off the bat apparent as like a big arrow pointing like, shoot here, dumbass. It's like, okay, great, shoot that, land this thing's flappers or whatever the hell, climb up it and get to work. And it's just like, damn, like most other games you'd hit a point and like the camera perspective would change and like a gigantic like X button would flash on screen and be like, hit me in 3 seconds, and you'd hit it and like your dude would jump up. But no, like, you got to figure all this shit out, and it's great. This is just one of the many moments in this game where I was impressed and like taken back, like, wow, they were doing this shit on the late PS2. Like, this is fucking awesome. But yeah, it's just moments like that where one after the other, this game's all boss fights, and it all just finally clicked with me, like, why this game is so impressive, why this game is so beloved. As I finished the game, that definitely compounded for me. The big story beats it tackles that I won't spoil here right at the end. Probably much more novel in 2005, 2006, but still pretty cool to look back on and be like, wow, this is kind of a bold thing for the time to go really this far with the story in the way they did. But to segue back to being a newbie, I just want to point out real quick, because these are some things I wish I knew. For one thing, there are certain trees that have fruit on them. Shoot those down, eat them. That'll increase your health bar. There are silver-tailed lizards, around save shrines and stuff. You don't save with the shrines in this version of the game, but those shrines are still around. They almost always have a silver-tailed lizard running around them. Shoot that, eat it. That increases your grip bar. And you will want an increased grip bar, trust me. And those lizards aren't solely at the temples. You can go look up a map online if you want to completely break the immersion. Otherwise, you'll be searching in some odd spots for that. Another thing, I played some of the PS3 version and I did not encounter this. So I'm thinking, in an attempt to appeal to millennial gamers, there's a voice in the game that will come up and tell you, like, it'll kind of give a vaguely cryptic hint during the boss fights, like, here's what you should do. That is very frequent in this version of the game. Like, it got to a point where I knew what I was doing and I was just fucking up in some fights and not, succeeding in like grabbing or stuff like that, or running out of grip. And you get that voice telling you like, hey, do this, idiot. And it gets a little frequent sometimes and you're just like, I get it. Like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just really bad at video games. Please leave me alone. I would say, honestly, turn that off as soon as you get into the game. It's called Dorman Hints or something. It's in the game settings. Turn that off, figure it all out yourself. If you really get stuck, go back and turn it on and get that vague hint and see if it helps you out. But you'll either enjoy it more figuring out on your own, or you can just save yourself the frustration of that voice frequently occurring like every few minutes during a boss fight. Either way, I think it's a win-win, because there are points where it's like, I'm already frustrated by like my own inability in the game, and the last thing I need is some voice saying the same voice line over and over while I'm like, I know, I get it, just... So that's something, I wish I'd figured it out much earlier than I thought to do in the first half of the game. Because in the first half of the game, I was just dealing with it. I'm like, alright, this is annoying, but whatever. This is like something they did to make it easier on people like me. But yeah, just turn that off. Don't worry about it. I don't know. I think this is a great remake. Blue Point always does fantastic work, from like the Metal Gear Solid HD collection to the Uncharted collection to... Even Shadow of the Colossus PS3 was pretty fucking impressive. If you compare that to the PS2 release, like they're just wizards. I like to think there are two companies that really get porting and remastering games. M2 does great with the 2D stuff, all the classic Sega stuff. They did Wii U's Virtual Console Game Boy Advance emulator. Blue Point is great with all the 3D games of like the PS2 era onward. Like, I don't know how they do it, but they are just fucking wizards. And both of those companies, both those studios should get a lot more respect than they actually get. I can't speak to how this performs on a PS4 Pro because, well, J. Aller don't pay me that kind of money. But on a base PS4, fantastic. Turn motion wore off. Just looks great. Image quality was fucking awesome. I was just so taken away with how this game looked. Every area, I was just completely like, engaged in what was happening and like wanting to explore this, this relatively little plot of land. Just really into it. This remake just lowered the barrier of entry for me to a point where I get Shadow of the Colossus, and it feels so good to finally get it, because engaged in the gaming space, this is one of those games you always hear about, and I bet a lot of people, or at least a decent amount of people, were in my position where it's like they wanted to give it a shot, they played that PS3 version or that PS2 version, and they're like, it just didn't get there for them. But this did it for me, and this also had the plus of making me go back to the PS3 version and be like, I really want to play the OG now. And that's not technically OG, but you know what I mean. And that, back to back, that really made me appreciate things Shadow of the Colossus PS4 did. Not just the control scheme, but I swear in the PS3 version, it is harder to maneuver around a Colossus once you have a grip on them, because the game tries to compound that sense of how insignificant you are by... Colossus will like flail around to try and knock you off, and you'll go flapping back and forth. That happens way more frequently in that PS3 version, I swear. Like, it is so much harder to get around on things. The third boss in the PS3 version is definitely... The timing windows are much shorter there, and you gotta be like on your game to climb up that dude. They made him easier in the PS4 version, and honestly, they made him less frustrating. Just due to that. This remake is... The best way I could put it, and to put it in summary, it's like a huge graphical overhaul and incredibly smart fine-tuning on the gameplay end, where it still feels like the same game, but it still kind of feels like a PS2 game, but like not in a bad way. Like, you get the sense from thinking about it that they must have just really like tore their hair out trying to figure out the right balance on things and how the game feels and how it feels to play and difficulty levels and all this stuff. I played through a normal for what it's worth. Just stellar remake. Once Microsoft sends me some more money, I would wholeheartedly recommend Shadow of the Colossus on PS4, because, if you have played it, it'd at least be interesting to see that new perspective, even if you're a purist, even if you're going to complain about it online. And if you haven't played it, this is like the way to play it. Unless you are super into like the historical aspect of video games, like this is just the way to go. It's at a certain rental service I will not name. That's how I play the game. So if you're like, I don't know if I'll enjoy it, give it a go that way and see if it's worth your full $40. But I think it definitely is. So yeah, I get Shadow of the Colossus now, and it feels great. You could even say I learned to love it. Oh. This video was supported by the following Patreon producers. Thank you.